She was forced by her family to marry her sister's millionaire fiancé. In Coma, unbelievable happened. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had not stopped for 3 days in Austin, Texas. Through the glass walls of St. Mary's Medical Center, the city looked like a blur of headlights and dripping neon. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet coats. Claire Donovan stood still, clutching her purse with both hands as the elevator doors opened. She had never set foot in a private hospital like this before. Every polished tile screamed money her family did not have. Her sister Abigail was supposed to be here. Abigail, the perfect one. The one engaged to Jamie Rutherford, the youngest energy tycoon in Texas, now lying in a coma after a devastating car crash on Highway 183. But Abigail had vanished 2 days ago, right before the wedding that was meant to unite the Rutherfords and the Donovans. When Claire reached the top floor, a man was waiting, Mr. Walter Rutherford, Jamie's father. Tall, silver-haired, eyes sharp as glass. "Miss Donovan," he said, voice cold and even. "Your sister's disappearance has created a scandal. Reporters are circling like vultures. My son's company cannot afford humiliation." Claire swallowed hard. "I do not know where Abigail went, sir." He studied her for a long moment. "Then you will take her place." For a heartbeat, she thought she had misheard him. "Take her place. You will marry my son. Legally. Quietly. The ceremony is arranged for tomorrow morning. It is a symbolic gesture to protect our name until he recovers." Claire stepped back, her pulse thundering. "Mr. Rutherford, that is insane. I cannot marry a man in a coma." "You can," he replied, "and you will. In return, I will pay your mother's medical bills, every cent. I will make sure she receives the best care in Dallas." The world tilted. The faint hum of hospital machines filled the silence between them. Claire's mother had been fighting lupus for years, barely surviving on a public insurance plan. Without help, she would not last the season. Walter placed a small folder on the table beside the hospital bed. Inside was a marriage license already filled out her name, typed neatly below Abigail's crossed-out signature. A simple platinum ring lay beside it, gleaming under the fluorescent light. Claire stared at the man on the bed, Jamie Rutherford. His face was pale but calm, framed by dark hair and the soft hiss of oxygen tubes. He looked nothing like the ruthless CEO from the news. He looked human, fragile. Walter's tone softened, just slightly. "No one needs to know. You are saving a reputation, and perhaps a life," Claire whispered. "You mean your company's life?" "Call it whatever you like," he said. "But it will save your mother's, too." Her heart pounded. She thought of her mother's weak voice on the phone that morning, thanking her for being the strong one. She thought of the unpaid bills stacked on the kitchen counter back home. Finally, she reached for the pen. Her voice trembled. "Fine, I will do it. But this is not a marriage. It is a debt." Walter nodded once. "The ceremony is at 9. Mrs. Brooks will help you prepare." When he left, Claire sank into the chair beside the hospital bed. The only sound was the steady beep of Jamie's heart monitor. She looked at him, her new husband, and whispered to the air, "You do not know me, and I do not know you. But starting tomorrow, we are bound by a lie." Outside, thunder rolled across the Texas sky. Inside, under the hum of machines, a small light flickered on Jamie's monitor, almost like a pulse answering hers. The next morning arrived gray and heavy over Austin. The storm had passed, but the sky still looked bruised, pale with leftover rain. Inside St. Mary's Chapel, only the faint hum of fluorescent light filled the silence. Claire Donovan stood at the front of the small room, dressed in a plain ivory dress borrowed from the hospital's charity wardrobe. The fabric hung a little loose on her shoulders, the lace yellowed with age. Her hands trembled as she held a small bouquet of lilies. They were not fresh, but they were all that the nurse could find at dawn. Beside her, a clerk cleared his throat, flipping through the legal documents. Behind him stood Mr. Walter Rutherford, tall and solemn, his gaze fixed on the man lying motionless in the wheelchair. Jamie Rutherford, the groom, was pale, his head slightly tilted, an oxygen line running down to his collar. His stillness made the air feel heavier. "Do you, Claire Donovan, take James Rutherford as your lawful husband?" the clerk read mechanically. Her throat tightened. This was not a vow. It was a transaction. She could feel Walter's eyes on her, waiting. "I do," she whispered. The words fell flat, barely louder than the sound of the rain sliding down the chapel windows. The clerk nodded, stamping the document. "By the authority vested in me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you legally married." Number 4. The pen felt cold in Claire's hand as she signed. When Walter took the paper, he folded it neatly, placing it into his leather briefcase as if it were a simple business contract. "Congratulations, Mrs. Rutherford," he said. "You will move into the estate today. The press will receive a statement by noon." He handed her a folder. Inside was a set of typed rules. No public statements without approval. No contact with the press. No access to company assets. Remain in the Rutherford residence until further notice. Do not reveal the circumstances of the marriage to anyone. Claire read the last line twice. Do not reveal the circumstances of the marriage to anyone. It felt like a warning, not a rule. She nodded silently. Understood. By noon, a car was waiting outside the hospital. It was a black Lincoln, polished to a mirror shine. She sat in the back seat, hands folded tightly in her lap as the city faded into long stretches of open highway. The driver said nothing. When the iron gates of the Rutherford estate opened, she caught her breath. The mansion rose from the mist like something out of another world. White columns, green lawns, and a fountain that sparkled under the weak Sunday. She had seen places like this only in magazines. Mrs. Eleanor Brooks, the housekeeper, greeted her at the door with a polite nod. "Welcome home, ma'am." Home. The word stung. The grand foyer smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Portraits lined the walls, generations of Rutherfords in oil and gold frames, all watching her with unreadable eyes. Upstairs, she could hear the rhythmic ticking of a large clock echoing through the hall. Eleanor led her to a bedroom on the second floor. It was elegant but sterile, decorated in shades of beige and blue. There were no personal touches, no warmth. A wedding ring sat on the nightstand, a simple silver band Walter had placed there earlier. Claire lifted it, sliding it onto her finger. It was too big. It slipped when she moved, clinking softly against the dresser. That night, the mansion felt impossibly large. Every sound, the creak of wood, the wind through the trees, made her flinch. She wandered the dark hallways until she found herself standing before a set of double doors. Inside, dim light glowed through a crack. It was Jamie's room. He lay there, surrounded by monitors and soft beeping. His face looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos that surrounded him. Claire hesitated, then stepped inside. "I guess we are married now," she said quietly. Her voice echoed off the marble floor. "But I am not sure what that means." She reached out and brushed a lock of hair away from his forehead. It was softer than she expected. "You do not know me," she whispered, "but somehow I owe you everything." She sat beside him and took out a small notebook from her purse. Inside were sketches she used to draw for her kindergarten students. Little stars, paper airplanes, hearts. On the first page, she wrote, "Day 1. Married a man who cannot hear me. Still, I will speak, just in case he does." Then she left the notebook on the nightstand and quietly slipped out of the room. In the silent corridor behind her, the faintest flicker ran through the monitor beside Jamie's bed, a single blip of activity, like a pulse that refused to disappear. The days turned into a quiet rhythm inside the Rutherford estate. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows, painting soft gold across the marble floors. Claire Donovan followed a routine that felt almost military. Breakfast alone, a polite check-in with Mrs. Brooks, then a visit to the medical wing where Jamie Rutherford remained in his deep, still sleep. Each day, she read a few lines from the notebook she had left by his bed. Sometimes poetry, sometimes small updates about the weather or her mother's recovery back home. The nurses told her it was pointless, that patients in a coma could not hear, but she spoke anyway. Her voice filled the sterile room with something close to life. One afternoon, as thunder rolled across the Texas plains, Walter Rutherford called her into his study. The heavy door closed with a low thud. Shelves of leather-bound books surrounded them, and the air smelled of bourbon and wood smoke. He gestured toward a chair. "Sit, Mrs. Rutherford." She sat carefully. "Yes, sir?" He pushed a folder across the desk. This is a revised version of your agreement. A few additional conditions. My lawyers advised it. Claire frowned, flipping through the pages. Additional conditions? Clause 12, he said, tapping the paper with a gold pen. You are not to disclose any financial information, nor engage with company staff beyond social appearances. Her pulse quickened. You think I am here for money? Walter leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I think you are a young woman with debts and a sick mother. I think desperation makes people reckless. I am simply protecting my son's legacy. His words cut deep, but she forced herself to stay calm. I did not marry your son for your money. I did it because you promised to save my mother. And I kept my promise, he replied evenly. Her hospital bills are paid in full. Let us both do our part. She signed the new papers silently. The pen shook slightly in her hand. When she left the room, the hall felt colder than before. That night, she returned to Jamie's room, carrying a small vase of wildflowers she had picked from the edge of the property. She replaced the old ones on the table and sat beside him. Your father does not trust me, she murmured. I guess I cannot blame him. This whole thing feels like a lie. The monitor beeped steadily in response, a mechanical heartbeat that somehow comforted her. She opened her notebook again, writing, Day 9. Still talking to you. Still waiting for something to change. The next morning, Mrs. Brooks found her sitting in the garden, lost in thought. Mom, the older woman said softly, Mr. Rutherford can be harsh, but not all of it is cruelty. He lost his wife years ago, and Jamie is all he has left. Claire nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. I understand. I just hope he knows I am not his enemy. Army Tet. Later that evening, as she prepared to leave Jamie's room, she noticed something new, a faint indentation on the bedsheet near his hand, as if his fingers had moved. She froze, holding her breath. But when she looked again, everything was still. Maybe it was the air conditioning, maybe it was nothing. Still, she wrote it down. Day 10. I think you tried to move today. Outside, the sun sank behind the rolling fields of Texas. The mansion's lights flickered on one by one, and somewhere deep in the silence of the medical wing, the monitor beside Jamie's bed blinked slightly faster than before, just enough to make the nurse frown and note it down on the chart. And for the first time since the wedding, Claire allowed herself to hope. The next few weeks passed in a haze of quiet routines and unspoken tension. The summer heat rolled across Texas, pressing against the tall windows of the Rutherford estate until the air inside felt heavy and still. Claire Donovan had learned the rhythm of the house, the way the kitchen staff whispered at dawn, the creak in the hallway near the library, and the exact hour when the nurses changed Jamie's for. She found herself spending more time in his room. Sometimes she read aloud from the newspaper. Other times she played soft music from her phone, songs she thought he might have liked when he was awake. She even started bringing her sketchbook again, filling the pages with little drawings of the garden or the sunrise. One evening, as she sat beside him, she noticed his hand twitch. It was so faint she thought she imagined it. But then it happened again, the slightest movement of his fingers. The nurse on duty noticed it too, quickly noting it down on the chart before rushing to call Dr. Hale. The doctor examined him carefully, his brow furrowed. It could be a reflex, he said, or it could be something more. We will need to monitor him closely. Claire stayed beside Jamie long after the doctor left, her heart racing. If you can hear me, she whispered, just keep fighting. I am right here. Over the next few days, the small signs continued. A flicker in his eyelids, a faint squeeze against her hand. Each one sent a shiver through her, a strange mix of hope and fear. Walter Rutherford remained distant, refusing to discuss it until there was medical proof. We do not speculate, he told her curtly. When he wakes, he wakes. Until then, keep up appearances. And so, she did. That weekend, he insisted she accompany him to the annual Energy Foundation Gala in downtown Austin, a glittering event, filled with reporters, executives, and old money charm. It was her first time stepping into public as Mrs. Jamie Rutherford. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and champagne glasses. Cameras flashed the moment they arrived. Claire felt every eye turned toward her, measuring her dress, her smile, her every movement. A reporter called out, Mrs. Rutherford, how is your husband's condition? She hesitated, remembering Walter's warnings. But instead of repeating the rehearsed line, she said softly, he is fighting, and I believe he will come back to us. Her voice was steady, and for a brief second, even Walter seemed taken aback. Later that night, She stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the Austin skyline. The city lights glowed below, a constellation of human stories. She pressed a hand to her wedding ring and whispered, "Maybe one day, this will mean something real." Back at the estate, she visited Jamie before bed. The nurses had dimmed the lights, and the rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the silence. She leaned over and placed her hand gently on his. "You should have seen it tonight," she said quietly. "They all looked at me like I did not belong. But I smiled anyway. For you." The machine beside the bed beeped once sharper, louder. She froze. His fingers moved again, stronger this time. Claire gasped, tears stinging her eyes. "Jamie? Can you hear me?" There was no answer, only the steady hum of machines and the echo of her heartbeat in the room. But the pulse on the monitor stayed higher than before, steady and alive. As she left the room, she turned one last time to look at him. For the first time since the day she had married a man she did not know, she felt something break open inside her, something that felt dangerously close to love. The morning after the gala, the Rutherford estate woke to unexpected news. Dr. Hale called just after sunrise, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Mrs. Rutherford," he said, "your husband's brain activity has increased significantly. It is the highest it has been in over 6 months." Claire nearly dropped the phone. She ran down the hallway, her footsteps echoing off the marble floors. When she entered Jamie's room, sunlight spilled through the curtains. His eyes were still closed, but his breathing had changed steadier, deeper, alive. The doctor adjusted the monitor, murmuring to the nurse, "We are seeing responsiveness. This could be the beginning of recovery." Claire stood frozen beside the bed. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Jamie," she whispered. "If you can hear me, please, come back." Walter Rutherford arrived within the hour, his usual stoic face cracking for the first time. "Are you telling me my son is waking up?" Dr. Hale nodded cautiously. "It is too early to say. But yes, the signs are promising." "Sen." Walter turned toward Claire. "Whatever you are doing, keep doing it." His tone was not kind, but it was the closest he had come to gratitude. Over the following week, Claire barely left the room. She read aloud for hours, told him stories about Austin, about her mother, about the stars above the ranch she grew up on. She talked until her throat ached. And then, one quiet evening, it happened. She was wiping his hand with a warm cloth when his fingers curled faintly around hers. Her breath caught. "Jamie?" she whispered. The faintest sound escaped his lips, a low, broken murmur. The nurse called the doctor immediately. Within minutes, the room filled with quiet urgency lights, footsteps, whispers, but Claire could not hear any of it. She was still staring at Jamie, tears running down her cheeks. When the others left, she leaned close. "You came back," she said softly. "You really came back." The next day, he opened his eyes fully for the first time. The world returned to him in fragments: light, sound, confusion. He blinked several times, focusing on the figure sitting at his bedside, a woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile. "Who are you?" His voice was weak, barely audible. She hesitated. "I am Claire. The word stuck in her throat. "I am here to help you recover." Dr. Hale reassured him that memory lapses were normal, that everything would come back with time. But the look on Jamie's face, curiosity mixed with quiet recognition, made her heart twist. Each day brought progress. He could move his arms, lift his head, even smile faintly when she told one of her awkward jokes. The nurses whispered that it was miraculous. Walter announced to the press that his son was on the road to recovery. One afternoon, as she helped Jamie with a simple physical therapy exercise, he asked suddenly, "You come here every day. Why?" Claire met his gaze. "Because you deserve someone who does not give up on you." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then he smiled, a small, tired smile, but real. "Then I guess I am lucky." That night, when Claire wrote in her notebook, her hand trembled. Day 37. He is awake. He does not remember everything, but he smiles now. And for the first time, I think I am the one who is changing. She closed the notebook, leaving it on the nightstand beside the silver ring that no longer felt quite so cold. Weeks later, the Rutherford estate no longer felt like a tomb. Laughter returned to the halls, faint and hesitant at first, carried by the sound of Jamie Rutherford's slow recovery. Each morning, Claire Donovan helped him sit up, guided him through breathing exercises, and walked with him along the terrace where the Texas sun poured over the fields like liquid gold. He was still weak, but his mind was clear. Sometimes he would stare out toward the horizon, voice rough but steady. "It feels strange," he said one morning, "to wake up and realize the world kept moving without you." Claire smiled faintly. "The world waited, actually. At least I did." He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt a warmth rise in her chest that she did not know how to name. Their connection had changed. What began as duty had become something fragile and real. During his therapy sessions, he asked for her presence. When he struggled to stand, she steadied him. When he grew frustrated, she distracted him with stories of the children she used to teach, or tales about the little town she grew up in. Slowly, his laughter returned. One evening, he found the notebook she had left on the nightstand. Its pages were filled with small sketches, notes, and dates. He flipped through it silently until one line caught his eye. Day 10. "I think you tried to move today." He looked up at her. "You wrote all this?" "Yes," she said, embarrassed. "It helped me feel less alone." Jamie smiled. "Then I owe you for not giving up." For the first time, he reached out and touched her hand deliberately. Not the weak grip of a recovering patient, but the gesture of someone who wanted her to stay. Their quiet routine continued, until one afternoon, when Walter Rutherford appeared unannounced. He watched from the doorway as Jamie walked across the room without assistance. Pride flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by his usual steel composure. "You are doing well, son," Walter said. Then his gaze shifted toward Claire. "And you, Mrs. Rutherford, have fulfilled your role better than expected." Jamie frowned. "What do you mean, her role?" Walter's expression tightened. "Claire was brought here to maintain appearances, to protect the company while you recovered. It was the only way to prevent scandal after your fiancé left." Jamie froze. "My fiancé?" Walter hesitated. "Abigail Donovan, Claire's sister." The room fell silent. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She had hoped this truth would stay buried, at least until Jamie was strong enough to face it. Jamie's eyes shifted from his father to her. "Is that true?" She nodded slowly. "It was supposed to be temporary. Your father made a deal with me to save my mother. I never meant to lie to you." Walter interrupted sharply. "You were never meant to become involved, Claire. Do not confuse gratitude with affection. Pares." Jamie turned to his father, his voice suddenly firm. "You do not get to decide what this means." Walter glared at them both, then left the room in silence. The tension he left behind filled every corner like a storm about to break. Claire whispered, "I am sorry. I should have told you sooner." Jamie took a deep breath, looking at the notebook in his hands. "You stayed when no one else did. I will decide what matters." The why. That night, she stood outside his door for a long time, unsure if she should go in. Inside, Jamie lay awake, the notebook resting on his chest. He traced her handwriting with his fingertips and whispered into the dark, "Thank you, Claire." Outside, the cicadas hummed under the Texas moonlight. And for the first time, she felt the fragile boundary between duty and love begin to disappear. The next morning, the Rutherford estate no longer felt peaceful. The air was sharp, charged with whispers and tension. News had spread quickly through the household that Jamie Rutherford had learned the truth. The marriage that had saved his family's reputation was built on deception. Claire Donovan woke before dawn, unable to breathe in the quiet. She dressed and went downstairs, hoping the walk through the garden would clear her mind. But when she turned the corner toward the dining room, she found Walter Rutherford already there, reading the morning paper. His voice was cold. "The board will meet today. They know about your little arrangement. You have done enough damage." Claire froze. "Mr. Rutherford, I never wanted any of this. I was trying to help." "Help?" He folded the paper and looked at her sharply. "You married my son under false pretenses. You played the role well enough to make the press believe. But do not pretend this was noble." Before she could answer, Jamie entered the room, leaning slightly on his cane but standing tall. His voice was calm, yet firm. "That is enough, Father." Walter straightened, startled by the authority in his son's tone. "You should be resting." "I am done resting," Jamie said. "And I am done letting you treat her like she is the enemy." "Hodang?" Claire's eyes widened. But before she could speak, a sound echoed from the front door, the sharp click of heels. A familiar voice followed. "Jamie?" Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, dressed in designer black, was Abigail Donovan. Her return hit like a storm. Claire's heart stopped. Her sister's expression was unreadable, caught somewhere between guilt and calculation. "Abby?" Claire whispered. "What are you doing here?" Abigail smiled faintly. "I heard Jamie was awake. I wanted to see him." Walter moved quickly, welcoming her like an ally. "Miss Donovan, you have perfect timing. Perhaps you can help fix what your sister has ruined." Jamie looked between the two women, confusion darkening his features. "Fix? What exactly do you expect to fix?" Abigail stepped closer. "The truth, Jamie. You were engaged to me. She took my place." The words hung in the air like a blade. Claire's voice broke. "That is not what happened. I did not steal anything. You left." "Too." Abigail's tone sharpened. "You think anyone will believe that? You, the woman who married a man in a coma for money?" Walter raised a hand. "Enough. The board already doubts the company's stability. A scandal will destroy us. Abigail and I will handle the press conference tomorrow. Claire, you are to leave the estate immediately." Jamie's jaw tightened. "She is not leaving." Walter's face hardened. "I am still the head of this family." Jamie stepped closer, his voice steady. "Not anymore." "Perdice." The silence that followed was heavy and final. Walter's expression faltered, realizing his son meant every word. That evening, Claire packed her things quietly. She left the silver wedding ring on the nightstand beside Jamie's notebook. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "This was never supposed to happen. I am sorry." Jamie found her at the front door before she could leave. "If you walk away now," he said, "do not think this story ends here." She met his eyes, tears shining. "It already ended, Jamie. You just do not know it yet." And with that, she stepped into the night. The door closed softly behind her, leaving Jamie standing in the dim hallway, the sound of her footsteps fading into the Texas wind. The next day, Austin woke to headlines that rippled through every business paper in Texas. Rutherford energy scandal. Fake marriage cover-up. By noon, reporters crowded outside the Rutherford estate, cameras flashing like lightning. The world had learned the secret that Walter Rutherford tried to bury. Jamie stood before the window of his father's study, the newspaper trembling in his hand. He read the headline twice, then let the paper fall to the floor. His reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, stronger, older, and tired of silence. Abigail sat across the room, perfectly composed, scrolling through her phone. "Damage control is already in motion," she said smoothly. "If you appear with me tonight at the foundation event, we can turn this around." Jamie looked at her sharply. "You mean lie again?" "Call it strategy," she replied. He shook his head. "I have lived enough lies." Walter entered the room, his voice hard. "You will do as you are told. The company cannot afford your rebellion. You are not thinking clearly." Jamie turned to face him, his voice calm but unshakable. "For the first time, I am, too." He picked up the silver wedding ring that Claire had left behind and closed his fist around it. "You taught me to protect the family name, but a name means nothing if you destroy everyone attached to it." Walter's jaw tightened. "You would throw away everything I built for a woman who deceived you?" Jamie looked at him steadily. "She told the truth when no one else would. She stayed when everyone left. I will not let you erase that." By evening, he made his decision. The annual Energy Foundation event was held at the downtown convention hall, a glittering spectacle that every camera in Austin attended. Reporters filled the entrance, waiting for a statement. When the doors opened, Jamie walked in alone. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and carried a small folded document in his hand. The room quieted instantly. He stepped up to the podium. "Good evening," he began, his voice firm. "You have read the stories, and yes, some of them are true. I was in a coma. The woman who stood by me was not my fiancée, but her sister, Claire Donovan. My father arranged a legal marriage to protect this company. It was a contract on paper." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Jamie took a deep breath. "But here is what the papers do not say. While everyone else treated me like a burden, she treated me like a human being. She spoke to me when I could not speak. She believed in me when no one else did. So if you call that deception, then I wish more people would lie like her." He unfolded the document and tore it cleanly in half. The sound echoed through the hall. "This was the contract that started it, but love is not paperwork." A hush fell over the room. Even Walter, standing in the back, said nothing. Jamie held up the silver ring. "She left this behind when she thought she was not enough. But she is. She always was. ISCVEC." He stepped away from the podium, the cameras flashing in rapid bursts. The world was watching, and for once, he did not care. Somewhere beyond the bright lights, Claire stood frozen near the entrance. She had come only to return a signed medical release for her mother. She had not expected to see him there, but as the crowd parted, their eyes met across the hall. He smiled softly. "You were never a mistake, Claire." Tears welled in her eyes as she walked toward him. The noise around them faded, replaced by a single truth that no scandal could erase. He took her hand, slid the ring back where it belonged, and whispered, "No more contracts, just us." The room erupted in applause, and for the first time since the storm began, the Rutherford name meant something honest again. A month later, the Rutherford estate looked nothing like the place Claire Donovan had first stepped into. The silence that once filled its grand halls had been replaced by laughter, by music, and by the warmth of people who finally chose honesty over image. The scandal that once threatened to destroy the company had become a story of redemption. Investors returned, employees stayed, and the Rutherfords rebuilt from truth, not pretense. On a golden afternoon in early autumn, the garden behind the estate bloomed again. White chairs lined the path beneath the oak trees, and soft country music floated through the warm Texas air. Friends, staff, and a few close colleagues gathered for a ceremony that was small, simple, and entirely real. Jamie Rutherford stood waiting by the fountain, dressed in a navy suit, his cane now resting unused beside him. The silver ring he once held as a symbol of guilt had been remade into gold. In his hand, he held a single white lily, the same flower Claire had carried the day of their false wedding. When Claire appeared, wearing a cream dress with her hair down in the late sunlight, the crowd fell silent. There were no reporters, no flashing lights, only the sound of the wind moving through the leaves. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and erased every trace of pain from the months before. As she reached him, Jamie whispered, "The first time we stood here, it was all for show." She nodded. "And this time, it is everything but." They exchanged vows that were simple and real. No scripted promises, no rehearsed lines. Just two people who had walked through lies, fear, and forgiveness to find something genuine. When Jamie slipped the golden ring onto her finger, he said quietly, "This time, I choose you with my whole heart." Applause rose softly around them. Walter Rutherford stood in the back, watching, his expression unreadable. But when Claire caught his gaze, he nodded once, a silent truce, an acknowledgement that she had saved more than his son's life. She had saved the family's soul. Later that evening, as the sun melted behind the horizon, Jamie and Claire walked hand in hand through the newly built garden at St. Mary's Hospital. A bronze plaque gleamed under the fading light. The Hope Garden, dedicated to those who never stopped believing. Claire touched the plaque gently. "You kept your promise," she said. Jamie smiled, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "You are the reason I woke up." She leaned into him as the first stars appeared above the Texas sky. The night was quiet, peaceful, and real. Their story had begun with a contract and a lie. It ended with truth, forgiveness, and love, strong enough to outlast every storm.